So, all right, we're on the air. This is the City of Athens Shade Tree Commission meeting of March 6, 2008, and the meeting will now come to order. The first items are tree permits and right-of-way issues, and we had a request from people in the Parks and Recreation Department about the South Side Park and the West State Street Park. In both places there had been winter damage to trees and windstorm damage to trees. So Ann and Emily, you two visited, did you not?
Yes. Ann was the one who assessed the
Artfully passed.
Did you get to see what I wrote?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and let's see, we have I printed out the thing for the record here about what was seen, that there are, let's see, you recommended that the trees be, for the most part, kept, right?
Well, there were 4 trees that we looked at, and actually, there was one big sugar maple that really is in the process of melting back into the earth. So we thought we should remove that one. It is, I think, a hazard.
Okay.
The one next to it just needs a little bit of pruning. Of course, these are trees that probably ought to be in a city contract. I think they're a little bit much for
too big for
in-house handling. And then there were 2 other trees. One that was mostly dead, a smaller tree, and then another one near the shelter house that's very tall but very narrow. And it could be pruned, but it only had like two branches, and so when we have to take the dead one off, there was just going to be kind of one branch.
I think you thought that it could be a danger to the shelter house too.
Yeah, I thought it wasn't worth the risk.
Yes.
So about 3 removals on that site.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
these are not related to the trees around the
golf mini park. Okay. Well, very good. And there was a white pine at the West State Street ball fields that was topped by winds.
Yeah, it had 2 leaders, and I guess several weeks ago, one bough broke off, and then with the latest storm, the other one broke off. So it's looking a bit awkward right now, but I think a lateral branch will assume dominance, and over time the foliage will fill in and be great habitat for perhaps a kestrel or even an owl or something. So I'm holding out for. Yeah, well, you never know.
Wildlife housing. That tree just looked so hopeless, but it has possibilities.
I think so. It might take 4 or 5 years for it to kind of green up again, but I don't think I've seen them come back. Then it's never going to look like the others, but.
Yeah, and you walked with Chris Smith and his cohort from Parks and Rec.
Yeah, Ryan.
So Ryan, yes.
Yeah.
And this is something that Parks and Rec, maybe the Tree Commission could cooperate with Parks and Rec to have a contract for things that we're having done with them having work done. It might be cheaper.
Yeah, definitely be a good idea to, if there's going to be any kind of city tree work, to whether it be streets or sewer, water and sewer or whatever, I'd say try to get that on one contract. And I don't think any of this is emergency work that has to happen tomorrow. I'd say take your time and get the best deal possible.
Okay. Thank you very much, and for the visit. I know it was a darn cold day when you went. See, there was another assessment. We got a request from the Streets Department about 46 Elmwood Place, a tree that had gone into an old clay lateral line. And your assessment, Ann?
Sweet gums do notoriously have aggressive roots, but if a tree root is actually infiltrating a pipe, there had to already be a crack in that pipe. And I'm assuming, I never did make contact with that property owner, so I'm assuming those are clay tile, they're jointed, they're probably cracked. So either way, he's really looking at replacing the pipe, and you can easily do that without removing the tree. interesting thing. You can remove the tree, and tree roots often will continue to grow for 3 or 4 years after the tree's even gone. So you can continue to have problems if you don't really address the root cause of the problem.
That's okay.
So
It had to happen.
I sent that to Andy. I found some information on the internet and some stuff from the ISA, and I sent it on, but I haven't heard.
Are sweet gums deep rooted or are they fairly shallow rooted?
Fairly shallow rooted.
Yeah. 'Cause
Yeah.
What I've seen is that the roots are right up at the surface. And
A lot
in
of
fact,
them are.
it's something else that's in the sewer. It's not necessarily a tree.
David,
the problem.
that's the thing. There was one of those cases down on the far east side. I remember going to a house, and they cut down first. There were 2 silver maples in the front yard. Cut them down, thinking that was so a year later, I get called back in here. It was the taxus bushes that were in the pipes, and it wasn't even the silver maple. Here they lost they only had 2 big trees in their whole yard, and they lost them. And they still had to eventually dig up the pipe and redo it. And nowadays, a good plumber can easily replace that pipe. It's probably a day job. So that's really what needs to happen there.
So we'll send that along to Andy one more time.
Yeah, was I supposed to contact the property owner, or was
No,
Andy?
I think Andy,
No, it's
the
it's
property owner.
either Andy or the city safety director
Yeah,
does that.
yes.
Formally.
And in that case, Andy was the point of contact.
Okay.
So, thank you. Next on the agenda are landscape ordinance issues and...
About 26.
Oh, I'm sorry, pardon me. That's,
26 Meadow Lane.
yes, and I was just there too, that's all. Yeah, all right, 26 Meadow Lane, and Ann was just there. This was
I was
something...
just there too.
Yeah, we was too.
Amazing we didn't all run into each other. And just as well we didn't, apparently it's
I'm
a
sure the
storm.
neighbors are like, what is going on back there?
Yeah, so there was concern about a tree that's really on private property, but
Yes.
with limbs overhanging a public utility
Well, it overhangs
area.
an alley.
An
that
alley.
It's not maintained. It's green, very green.
Yes, and I talked to another neighbor who lives at 3 doors down from that site, says that heavy trucks never go any farther than her backyard. No heavy truck wants to drive over the area where that tree limb is arching, because there is an old storm tunnel there, and it had sunk a couple of years ago, and there's been repair to the area. So getting a big truck back in there to do anything is not...
I think it would have to be done by somebody climbing it with ropes and so on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do that.
And Ann's point about this is that this does appear, since this is an unmaintained, unimproved alley,
Improved is the word, yeah.
unimproved alley, and there seems to be really a dispute here between 2 neighbors that perhaps this is an inappropriate thing for the city to be getting into. Steve, did you have any comment on this?
Really, nothing additional. I think you're right, your observation's probably right. It's just like if you had a tree on one neighbor's property and it was overhanging, there wasn't an alley even in between.
Yeah, there's even a surveyor's stake that shows very clearly where property line is.
I think the property on Hudson is probably a rental, and so it may be useful to consult with Steve to find an address that we can tell these people to contact.
Ah,
Well, I think we even have that information
Okay.
already.
Okay.
yeah.
My fear too, just on the city's behalf, you start pruning trees for one landowner, and there's a whole length of property owners with trees. And inevitably, we wouldn't do it to their satisfaction. If they work with each other, chances are they'll get a better result in the end, I think. So I think you guys are doing the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, there doesn't seem to be an immediate hazard at all.
And they're not utility lines, so
Well,
AEP's,
it's...
is it phone? I think?
It's
Cable?
phone, it could be cable.
See, they might
Well,
get some
they
help
would be,
if-
they're authorised to do their own pruning if they need to.
Okay.
And so that utility, if you like, can come in and prune if they wish.
Yeah, so let them call those utilities and...
That might be a way for them to get it done by somebody else.
Okay. Since I got the initial email contact on this, I will boil down your opinion and we are, I think, in agreement.
Yes.
That's why I didn't send it on, because I wasn't
Yeah.
sure what the outcome was going to be. so.
Okay, all right. No? Very good, all right. And now, on to the landscape ordinance issues, and we have Mr. Valentour here from RVC Architects, and he has a correction, not a correction, but changes to, that we recommended for the Fern Street project, where there's an apartment building going in, and we've made some recommendations that instead of the flowering cherries there, 7 trees on the north side of the parking lot, that a more hardy fastigiate or columnar tree of some sort, 7 of those be put in place. Mr. Valentour? Not quite sure how to do this, yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. John Valentour, RVC Architects. And on the Fern Street property, I talked with you, Alvy, this week about certain things at that site. And I looked up the trees and everything, and I'm thinking, I brought an alternate plan that I want you guys to at least consider, because the trees, if we plant tall trees here, across, I brought some photographs of the Moneypenny Kleinman building, which is going to be right next to where these trees will be planted. I thought that might not be the best thing to do, and I just want you to consider
Yeah,
that.
we wanted you to keep away from just, the front door and these trees
Right.
here. Yeah.
Well,
Cluster them.
I brought 2 plans. I brought the one that we originally submitted with the taller trees across the entire front of the Fern Street property. This is owned, by Bart Kassler, the reason we're here. But also another alternate plan, that the building that is on the blue building, which is, I don't think I have a photograph of it, that's going to be torn down.
Yeah.
And 5 parking spots are going to be placed in that location. Now, I think it might be better to intensely plant the border there where those 5 parking spots are, rather than go right in front of the Kleinman building with tall trees. These trees would be on the south side of the building, blocking all sun from getting to that building at all. And they've already have, like the photographs show, I thought, sort of a lot of different planting concepts going on in front of their structure already.
Yeah, there's some very handsome, what is the evergreen? It's a weeping, well,
I'm
it's a
going to
very
bring up
handsome
this
thing.
plant here.
I think it's some sort of arborvitae, actually. Maybe it's just
Wow.
arborvitae, I'm not sure.
This is
Good. Print
the
paper.
original,
It's not, you can
that's the original thing that you guys want to modify. And I'm thinking, maybe we intensify all our planting right here, because there's a parking lot here and a parking lot here. So intensely planting tall, green, and then I would say we plant under it as well as above it. I mean, so we have a lot of greenery
Like a
going
layer.
on.
Well,
Yeah.
Now,
Rather than planting in front of what they've already done.
How about, there's space over here, is there not?
I could do that too.
Yeah, that's what we were hoping, some kind of clustering would take place.
I could
Yeah,
do
I
it
think
here
I agree
and
with
here and avoid putting it right in front of their building.
well,
Yeah.
now, if you were using this space, we were talking about the columnar trees.
Right. That's what,
But
I could go out here.
yes, large shade trees.
And that's why I
there.
I left all this blank, because I don't know, I thought that if we had a
You still-
different idea there, I mean, you see the photographs.
It probably still needs to be fastigiate, don't you?
This is already poured in concrete, I have to cut it all out.
If
I
there's
mean,
parking lot here
But
and here.
is this-
this is parking here, this is Moneypenny parking here.
Yeah.
This will be parking for the structure that's being built now.
Oh, you mean planting space?
Yeah, it's still like a
4 feet.
4 foot
Yeah.
planting, yeah, so
Well, how high do we have to go before it's clear?
How many stories?
I'm sorry?
How many stories are we talking about in height alongside this?
This building is only 1 story in height.
Yeah, well, what about these?
But that's just
Parking
empty.
spots.
Yeah,
And
just,
there is
Just
The
parking.
building that we're dealing with is
Yeah,
on the other side of the
so
street.
we wouldn't need fastigious trees there, would we?
no.
I think she's saying not. I thought maybe fastigious trees there, just because it's still really narrow. I mean, maybe
He's
not.
got 20 feet between them.
No, we were saying you could
Yeah.
cluster on 15-foot centers with
Yeah.
columnar
Yeah,
trees.
Yeah, we wouldn't
and
want them
the
that
trees that
close
were
if we wanted
recommended
to have trees.
were like
Like-
50 feet tall and 15 feet wide, I think,
Yeah.
or something there.
Yeah.
The ginkgo, whatever, I looked it up. I can't pronounce it.
The
It was
ginkgo.
what you guys
Yeah.
suggested. I mean, they would be tall and.
Yes,
and-
yes.
And here.
Yeah.
And I think that would be good to try to make this asphalt area a little bit more
Yes.
quiet.
But
There will
then-
be, there's a retaining wall back here already too, that's already in place.
Would it be better then if we didn't have them as close together, if they were going to be
I'd say
shade tree?
cluster them just to
Yeah.
make that impact.
Well, I would suggest
Yeah.
putting lots of
Picture of the trees
low
before you
stuff
would-
in there too,
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make a
to
screen.
break the visual thing.
Yeah, no, I think.
See,
it's
if
fine.
you also look at the plan, the way this thing works, and the reason I could push, if I could push these parking spots back, the way the road works is it comes in at an angle and turns. This is a little bit unusual in this area of town, because
There's never a usual
the
place
owners of
anywhere in
this
town.
property own the street.
Yes.
So, and the way we come in and have to deal with it, if I have to pull these parking spots back too far, it's actually gonna encroach upon the ability of traffic to get through.
Yeah.
I mean, the parking spots are there now, but it's a little bit tight.
What about this space right here for planting?
Well,
You
it
said that
would
was a
have to be
possibility?
up here.
Up
These
forward.
3 spots do not belong to the Furnace Street property.
Those are
These
dedicated.
are dedicated by others, and they're someplace else, but I could do it here, outside of the
Decline
shadow of that building, essentially.
Remember too that these trees, trees are like fish, they can only grow to the capacity of their environment that they're in.
Yeah.
So, even if you put a big old white oak right there, not that we would, it's never gonna be as big as the tree you might
That's
find
not
on your
gonna
back
happen.
40. Yeah, so keep that in mind,
Don't worry about it being really humongous.
Yeah, they
Well,
get
we-
stunted in that really bad soil.
Right, and well, the thing of it too is, like a white oak, it's gonna take, your children are gonna appreciate it, not you.
We're not
Okay.
suggesting.
No, yeah, we're not, that wasn't just an example.
I mean, it takes so long for them to grow.
Yeah.
Compared to some of these other trees that we can put in and will have more of an immediate impact in terms of the environment. But hardiness is definitely gonna be a factor here because it's in the middle. This is uptown Athens. This is
Yes.
not-
This is why we
It's not
suggested tough
really
trees.
out
Yeah.
in a community or a neighborhood with lots of grass. There is no green space here.
But
David,
that's
well,
the idea
the-
of the shrubs with the trees close together. It might create, almost, shrubs really work because it keeps people away, especially if they're prickly, little
Well,
junipers.
nobody's gonna walk through this one. So many times you have these planting islands in malls and places.
Yeah.
And I've experienced this in everywhere, Pittsburgh or wherever I go. And it ends up, people just walk through them because that's the easiest way to get to whatever store. And there's never any undergrowth that ever develops in these little planting islands that you put in these parking lots.
Didn't
Because
you
they
s-
end up getting trampled.
Yeah, there's
Didn't
a-
you say there's a retaining wall along
grade
People will
change.
not be walking
Yeah.
through that, so that it has an opportunity to actually have a multi-tiered kind of a green,
Yeah.
breakup of this little street here.
The ginkgos are a really tough tree, and they're wide-spreading ones as well as the narrow, and hackberries and,
Well, this festigate.
festigate.
That just- that's just-
Ginkgo is a columnar of ginkgo is one I picked out, but I didn't write it down here because, and I found it, and it sounded appropriate for the
well,
spot.
fastigiate just means that it's columnar. That's just the form.
We like to use fancy names,
Yeah.
just to throw everybody off.
So you understand it?
Yes. Well, so how about this? We have 4 This would be appropriate for 4 or 5 columnar,
Four trees there.
4 trees.
They're
And-
15 feet
That's like
apart.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Oh,
5.
they're 10 feet across, yeah.
That's
And-
45 feet
Yeah.
right there.
Yes,
Yeah,
so this is,
4 trees is...
4 trees is plenty.
Okay.
And hackberries are another really tough tree.
Yeah, I think it has that as an option there.
Well, what do you mean for where? Oh, what do you mean saying for that?
Yeah.
As opposed to a ginkgo?
Yeah, another option.
She's giving you choices in case your
I
landscaper
have choices.
turns
I'm
round.
here to get the.
You just want to be told what to do, I know, but the problem is when you go to your landscaper, he may say, or she may say to you, we don't have that, is there anything else we can use?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can add,
Hackberry has a different form, so it's not going to have that formal look that you might have saw, when you looked up the ginkgo. But it's a tough tree. You'll get canopy cover, you get shade for those parking lots. And
Mhm.
what'll really be interesting is to see what you're going to do with the layered, the
Well,
shrubs.
I'll talk to my landscape people that I normally use, and they try to come up with things that are going to survive, but unless you have any other options.
Prickly evergreens, like junipers, some of the spreading, there's junipers that only get 3 or 4 feet tall.
Right, some of these things they've done, they've survived, and it looks like a very hostile environment right there.
Yeah, they're pretty. Those pictures don't even do it justice. I mean, don't you think?
yeah,
It's much
you make
prettier
good
in person.
choices.
Would you have any other options to suggest for these trees?
Well, what was the one that, did we got one sawtooth oak maybe or something?
Sawtooth oak
'Cause it
was
had
the other-
thick bark or, that's a
Yeah.
more of a medium-sized tree.
We had a European hornbeam down as well.
Oh, yeah. those
Yeah,
are-
but those
They're
are
small.
the columnar.
Okay.
If we're thinking about arching over the parking lot, we don't want that.
Okay.
Now, do you want me to still try to put something in at the other side?
I think it'd be good to try and get at least 1 or 2 trees in over this side, yes, if we can.
Because I'm going to cut the concrete out that's existing
What,
to do that.
what did it mean on this plan when it was like that?
Art loves to do that.
Pardon me?
What did it mean on this plan when it was like that? Was that going to be a walkway?
I was going to have to cut the concrete out.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's easier to do than,
And that's why I come up with, I thought that this might be a little bit, and I just got nervous about
Yeah.
completely blocking the sun off of Planted Moneypenny's building there.
yeah, and you're right, their place does look good without.
Yes.
We did
So-
this, and create more of a problem, I think. I would even think it might be 2 parking spots would be better instead of 3, just, and then do something.
If you can get 2 more trees. I think people are willing to accept 6 trees altogether, and if you can, this is really a good idea to have the shrubbery in here
Yeah.
to create a screen and
Yes.
protect the trees some.
Well, for ground cover, because the trees aren't gonna, even a tree, when you plant them at 20 feet on the center, if there's nothing on the ground,
Yeah,
there's
no,
a
you-
lot of barren space there visually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
The other thing to watch out for, you seem to have some protection in here, but you'll need to make sure that people
Wheel
can't...
stops.
That
We
wheels-
have wheel stops
wheels,
that are gonna be
yeah, that they stop.
incorporated on all these, ways to keep the
Good.
trees.
Very good. well then, this meets
All
our,
right, now, what do I have to do? Do I have to get handcuffed further or what? I
No,
you've
we-
heard-
we-
you've been listening?
Sounds like a lot of options to me.
What we need to do is make sure that Steve has got a copy of that final plan that we've
Okay.
got there.
Well, that's
Without-
what
without
my
no
final, is I gotta make
situation.
modifications for that
Yeah.
one side,
Yeah,
and
well,
then I've
we'll-
gotta define the other little bushes that are gonna go underneath the trees, right? Okay.
yes. And we will give you a quick summary in print that'll say there are 4 trees
This
plus.
is what you're supposed, that I'm
Yeah,
supposed to do.
right, and you have a choice of that
Okay,
menu.
and then at that point, then he can,
Yeah, and he'll keep the record straight of
Okay.
what we did.
you want this one?
This is the old...
No, thank you.
Thanks.
What about this one?
We'll keep that one for now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Just pull that on the microphone, it keeps the students away back there. All right, the next is also John Valentour's show tonight. The landmark site, this is Palmer Place, apartments that are on Stimson Avenue, and Bob's
Okay,
Supermarket.
Again, we've tried to communicate with you guys about what would be appropriate for this site. I've been your old plan that was the first version. Yep. Markups on it. And the new plan, but hopefully, in this case, we incorporated all the modifications that you guys, and we've revised our planting schedule to reflect what you're looking for. Now, on Stimson Avenue and on, what is this, Kern? We can't have anything tall because we've got power lines.
You're limited to
Everywhere.
about 20 feet on those.
So we've come up with a lower
Yeah.
kind of profile on those two.
Quonset cherries, aren't they?
I think, and I tried to conform with what you guys have already related to our office, what
Yep.
might be appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see you've managed to put some trees in here because
That's not a
this seemed to be an open space. And the only comment, I think these would have been better as lindens, but
We put them in as maple.
they're the London plane tree,
No.
which you get. I mean, they're a nice single
Yeah.
tree. I mean, it'll
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
You know, you've seen these buildings, they're tall. and
Yes.
I want to make sure that we get light into here.
Yeah.
So I don't want to have too many trees in there because I think that sunlight's going to be important to make that
Well, that-
courtyard
Yeah.
feel, like an inviting space where grass can grow.
Yeah.
So this looks like everything that
We asked for.
We asked for, yes.
You can keep that if you want to review it to make
Like
sure,
to,
but I think that hopefully this will be,
Yep.
I
I
think
mean, we tried to work with you guys already to make sure we could come up with something that was
Yeah.
appropriate.
Yes. No, you and David worked well to get this together. Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you. I think that
Yeah.
this is, yeah, I think we can approve this.
Yep.
Well, can you do that, Emily? Yeah. Okay. And don't leave just yet. We have a question, please, for you, Mr. Valentour, on the Dental Depot, 80 Columbus Road. This is really a long time ago. This is an old plan. Let's see,
That's
do I
right.
have it?
Yep.
Yeah, so there are some trees that have not yet been planted.
I noticed that too.
And quite a few, if, pass this down that way. There were 2, 4, 5 on the south side of the parking lot that had not yet been planted, and at least 1 in a lawn on the south,
End of the property.
yeah, south end of the property. So
I'm-
there's 6 trees not yet there.
I'll have to talk to the owners of the facility and make sure that those get done.
Yeah, I mean,
Because those were, part of those were based on the appeal that we obtained from the city of Athens from zoning. And the project was accepted, predicated on those trees being planted. And so I can talk to the,
Yeah.
If you would, please.
Yeah.
The
It is the
owners.
obligation of the owner. It isn't your obligation to plan them.
okay, well, I'll do that.
But if you
and
would, that
I'll
would be-
make mention to them.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, there's one other item that relates to me, or I might not, I don't know, the University Mall. I see that's on your agenda tonight. I was curious. as
Yeah,
to
we're
what that-
curious about who's responsible, what the requirements are in the way of usage of space, and eventually, if there's more redevelopment there, the possibility of planting trees in
In the
that
parking lot. Well, I think that we had a plan to, the farmer's market pavilion none of that's going to happen, I don't think, at this point in time. And we were going to try and make the site more green if that occurred, but I don't know exactly what the plan is now, because that project, as far as I can tell, is not quite going to happen. But we have been out there trying to do some landscaping around the perimeter, if you've seen that along
Yeah.
East State Street
The
itself.
shrubs are
with,
nice, but the,
Now, I think the
columns and stone.
the main question was, do we know, or does the city understand exactly who needs what parking in all of that area? so that we're prepared to be able to receive a plan when it comes to us. That was why it's on our agenda, is to just to make sure that Steve is up to date with the parking requirements generally.
That's
in
for
that
Steve
area.
then?
Yeah, I think I responded in
You did.
email to
You-
your question.
Yeah, you've got there's a written response to it all. So I think
Well, things are hopefully going to be happening at the mall, and I think that
Yeah.
the owners of the mall are very receptive to trying to make the entire complex more attractive and
Yeah.
more in compliance with city
Yeah.
concerns.
Yeah, it's just with these large areas like this, we need to have some sort of clear understanding of who is obliged to plant what trees, and therefore who's got what parking, and so on and so forth.
I think that there's also a precedent that in terms of when things are required to comply with the new regulations versus whatever regulations
yeah.
that
Yeah,
facility
and
was
also
built on.
whether you consider that to be one large property which is being improved, or whether it's several small properties.
Right.
Each
Well, that
with
might
their
have to come
requirements.
from the city
Yeah.
in terms of
Oh, yes,
some
yeah.
kind of an understanding.
And your preference would be, look at it as individual spaces, there are probably 30 spaces in the mall, or look at it as one large
I
property?
don't know. I just want I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of what they're looking at.
Right, that's what I'm trying to get to.
Is that something the law director needs to weigh in on?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, it's usually I mean, for instance, if you look at the Athens Mall, which is under the university, each of the properties on there, like Kroger's, for instance, they have their own parking requirement.
Okay.
Therefore, they have their own landscaping requirement. It's not integrated into the mall requirement as a large property. And that's, I'd like to know eventually with the University Mall, is that what they have there? I mean, is the movie theatre separate from the
It's all the same owner.
the single? It's all the same owner, but you know, the university, the Athens Mall's one owner as well. It's the university that owns that one, but they have leased them out as spaces. And I don't know how we should look at those things. Bennigan's, for instance, I believe, have some arrangement with the owner of the University Mall for parking. I mean, does that then obligate them to provide those spaces for that property, and therefore does that reduce the space available for elsewhere? Because this gets to be important when you're trying to work out, particularly under the current regulations, whether or not we can require trees to be planted.
Right.
Just for a little background, the University Mall is leased to Chesapeake Realty in Columbus, Ohio, from the Ohio University. And when their renovation occurred, it was a complete renovation of the building. They tore the whole front off of the building. So the plans were reviewed in light of a total renovation of a single building, even though it was busted up into individual tenant spaces. At the time, the landscape ordinance did not apply because they were actually diminishing the floor area, which had a retrofit requirement if you did increase, but this was a decrease. And what came out of this was a new section in the landscape ordinance that requires retrofitting when the cost of improvement exceeds 50% of the value. At the Athens Mall, that'll probably be a little hard to do because those improvements will be over time, not one large project. I remember the property, I don't remember exactly what the University Mall was valued at, but I remember the new owners asked for a tax reduction or a tax devaluation of the property. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's $13 million, but that could easily be checked at the auditor's website. So we're talking about 50% of, say, $13 million. Well, do you look at, I see what you're saying, say a large developer comes in, but he doesn't, at the far end, doesn't do 50% improvement. Then all of a sudden, a little candy store puts it over the threshold, in the middle of the mall. A little jewelry store or something like that. Who's responsible? My opinion would be that the owner of the property is responsible, not the individual. There would be an arrangement to be worked out between the individual tenants and the owner being responsible when the threshold was finally passed. Flood damage prevention ordinance has cumulative substantial improvement that's being considered right now. The landscape ordinance doesn't say that. It's almost like a one-shot improvement cost. So it's not really clear how to handle, it is clear how to handle University Mall, Athens Mall. It's not clear how to handle University Mall. obviously little individual outlots would be proposed. There was an Italian restaurant that was proposed as an outlot. That would have been its own entity, its own lease lot.
Yeah. And when, as in this case, some of the space around the main building has been leased to, say, the movie theatre or to Bennigan's, how does that impact future discussions on what parking is available for the main building? Does the fact that they've leased off spaces make those spaces unavailable?
It's not always easy for me to know what they've signed as a private lease. By happenstance, I found out that some of the parking where the Italian restaurant was going to go is actually an additional lease above and beyond the minimum parking requirements of the parking that goes with the movie theater. So as I get that information, I hold on to it. And you have parking spaces like at Tractor Supply that have equipment parked in them.
Yes.
Right now, it's not that big of a problem because there's a lot of extra parking. But it will, eventually creep to a point. Does the landscape ordinance then apply under the retrofit section? So, I'm glad to have the discussion right now because, when that threshold's finally reached, who's responsible and how much do they have to do?
And also, if there are these small buildings put into the front part of the parking lot, are they going to have enough space dedicated to them to enable the landscape ordinance to be applied?
Exactly. The zoning code says that lease lots or outlots have to meet the same requirements as if they were a platted lot or a surveyed lot or a recorded lot. Road frontage being one. So lease lots have to front out on the road. Now, if the farmer's market probably won't be there, there's opportunity for that to be an outlot or a lease lot. Just like on the other side of the street, you've got Ruby Tuesdays and Captain D's and Hollywood Video. Those are all, they all have road frontage, meet the requirements, and therefore, by the zoning code, are identified as standalone parcels. In the case of the mall, it's not really clear what that is in relationship to the landscape ordinance.
I have a question. It might be a stupid question, but I remember in the past, we were encouraging that 8-foot barrier around competing land uses. And is that something that can be said to developers right up front? Hey, if you're going to develop a plat and a lot, an outlot, figure in the 8 extra feet around the perimeter of the property so that there is room for trees. Because I think what happens is they're trying to squeeze so much, and then, trees, and everything else is already done. And
with the new ordinance, they just do a simple calculation.
Okay.
A certain fraction of that lot is going to have to be dedicated to trees.
Okay.
And they may not be planted within certain distances of each other.
Okay.
Go figure out how you do it with that space you've got.
Okay.
We don't interfere, we don't prescribe exactly how the parking lot is laid out or anything.
Okay.
They just have to plant a certain fraction of the lot.
So when do you think has that gone to council yet at all?
It has.
It's already passed.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
and
already through.
Oh,
Third reading is done.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
Yes.
Right. And what it did was it eliminated those 8-foot buffers that you're referring to. I can remember during the revisions, the Chamber of Commerce had comment on some things. One of them being we have 8 feet here and 8 feet here on 2 lots. You have 16 feet of open space. Now we don't have to worry about that.
I mean,
Right. So what we're talking.
Well, some of it is still in there. I think the front requirement is still there. The
road
buffer at the
frontage.
front.
oh, okay.
And there is and there is a requirement that there is buffering between adjacent properties,
Oh, good.
particularly when there are different uses
Yeah.
there. And so we didn't say how wide that buffer has to be. They can figure that out, and they can plant trees in there. But there's restrictions on how small the space you can plant a tree in. Again, it's up to them to figure out how to make it work in their property rather than having this horrible prescription that they can't fulfill because it just doesn't fit the shape of the lot they've got.
There's never a lot that's
Yeah.
a regular shape.
I mean, the intent is that they'll be able to work with Steve and he'll be able to see that it fits the requirement.
There are a lot of competing interests going on a piece of property. One reaction that the city had not too long ago related to that and in consideration of the then pending adoption of the landscape ordinance was to reduce the parking requirement for retail or business centers exceeding a certain square footage. And that's why Lowe's has half the amount of parking that was required at the time that Walmart was built. So there are these overlapping interests, and the city has accommodated somewhat by reducing the minimum parking requirement. So, there has been additional flexibility, reaction, sensitivity, to the people who want all building and all parking, but, this need too there's an environment beyond the parking of cars and the sale of merchandise.
Well, I think we've got the
Yep, I think we've
question.
got that one.
Yeah, thank you for the summary that you sent on the
Yep.
University Mall to the very, very vague question that arose. And let's see, I think the last landscape ordinance issue is not an RVC one, so that at least spares Mr. Valentour.
McDonald's.
McDonald's is a lingering, not yet fulfilled planting on the landscape ordinance. And this is a construction that was over as of last winter, I think. So they have 2 planting seasons in which to fulfill the requirement
No,
for.
it was, I thought they didn't finish until the summer. I'm not sure.
When did they
They
finish?
opened a little bit after school opened in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
They
sorry.
wanted to open right when school opened,
Yeah.
but
It didn't quite happen.
Yeah, so
No,
they
They have until fall of 2008.
at least, yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it
Okay,
says,
I think-
I think it's 2 planting seasons in the old landscape ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so that-
depending on whether you think there are 2 seasons in a year or it takes 2 years for 2 seasons.
That's right, so they could do
They
it.
had
as-
one fall this year and they've got another fall next year. I think we can all agree on that one. Yeah. I mean, they've got the fall coming up.
Yes,
In
and-
this year, in which they should fulfill it.
I did make that calculation accurately
Yeah.
the first time.
I think in the case of McDonald's, I do have a complete enough record now, thank you, Ms. McWilliams, for sending that over. I probably have it somewhere, but
Yes, it turns out I.
now we have all in one place the series of 2 or 3 additional meetings that occurred when trees that were originally slated to be saved had to be cut in order to accommodate pouring of concrete for curbs for the parking area. So with that history, then, I can do like a reminder letter to the developer that on this date, here's what happened, here's what was reviewed, here's what you agreed to, here's the amount of time you have to do it in.
Very good. Well, I think,
So that'll be helpful, and then I can, start a record so somebody doesn't say, oh, why did you notify me 2 years later?
yes, well, they'll.
Can you give me
be
another
able to
planting
plan.
season?
Yeah.
For some reason, that's kind of
Yeah.
how
I mean,
these things work
They
out.
could plant them this spring and water them. There's nothing to
Yes,
stop.
but it would be
So
easier.
I will draft a letter to them to remind them of the history and the requirements.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, just a question, because I'm new here. What happens if, come the end of this upcoming fall, it's still not completed? Then what's the recourse?
He keeps writing letters, and eventually one letter tells them that they've got to do it within so many days, and it goes to the law director.
Okay.
It's very similar to, the penalty section is like most penalty sections in the city code. They're minor misdemeanors. The penalty's $100 a day. The possibility of each and every day being a separate offense. The city has to file every day. The current judge wants us to file every day. We can't file one time with 14 complaints for 2 weeks, on one piece of
Sure.
paper. Usually what happens is letter after letter after letter is written. Then it's forwarded to the law director. And just so you know, too, I'm going to forward Bennigan's to the law director. I've had no response back from them. So that will be an example of how the process works. The law director's office then speaks with me normally. Do we want to go immediately to complaint? Or does the law director's office want to write a couple more letters? Theirs seem to be a lot more effective than mine. Their letterhead must be more imposing. A lot of times that does get action. It could go all the way, though, to the point of prosecution, just like, a lot of things do eventually. There's a lot of work.
That's uncommon, though.
It's not common. There's a lot of work that goes into things to keep them from going to court,
Yeah.
I guess is one way to look at it.
The best
It's
thing
an
that can happen is that somebody will call Steve and say, has the city got any outstanding claims on this? We're being asked to refinance it. At that point, when he says yes, it's remarkable how quickly trees get
Right.
planted.
That is what happened down at Dollar General, as an example. I'd noted to them over and over and over again some zoning violations that they had and some landscape violations. They finally wanted to sell the property or refinance it. The lender required clearance from the city that there was compliance with all city regulations. And, boy, those trees got in the ground real quick. Or relatively quickly after that.
3 years after it was built.
So, and there are a lot of instances like that, not just with trees, but banks and lending institutions. They've got quite a bit of leverage. They're the ones with the checkbook, and I do have a good working relationship, especially with local banks too. I get heads up on things sometimes, or out-of-town banks especially will know when I go to a city, there's a drill that I go to get clearance from the city. So there are a lot of different mechanisms that are in place.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. We've already gotten the news from Elahu Ghazni, our representative, but the landscape ordinance revision has had its third reading and is final.
Yeah, it's city code now.
Good.
Thank you,
Well,
City Council.
Thank you all. Actually, you guys did all the work on getting that together.
Just as it works.
I know that at least one architect was very delighted at the prospect. So, the next item is Emerald Ash Borer, and we are having a meeting with Darren Cohen of Ilgard to try to get things back on schedule.
Well done.
Monday,
And did it.
Well, we're getting there.
See if he can come out with a copy of the data.
Yeah, that's the goal. And interesting, when I did speak with him, it's been on his mind, and he's very interested not only in finishing the ash tree inventory, but going a little bit further and expanding that to look at trees citywide, or at least getting a better picture of what tree canopy is. So, just...
Yeah. Well, it's one thing that we've discussed and we'd like to get done, but it's may require not just volunteers but some financing as well.
Well, and he says that they have a contract with the city, and that part of that contract was the tree inventory, and that they found somebody that could do that, and they. So
Okay.
he wants to talk to Albie and I about that on Monday, and maybe you
Yeah.
can attend too if you want.
Have you got a copy of the inventory?
I have the, yes,
Yeah,
I do.
you've got. Okay.
The old one, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
because I mean, I still think that is going to be a good starting point.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll,
I mean, if we could just get that thing scanned, it would help.
that's a
Well,
possibility, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, anything else on that? Okay, well, that happens on Monday. And there is nothing to report on the ODOT Gateway Grant. Nobody
Oh, my
is.
plea. This is, ODOT, this is a great opportunity for the city of Athens to get free plant material, everything from bulbs, shrubs, and trees. It's a very simple grant process, although it takes some time, but it's a linear process, so it's easy. The only thing the city has to do is, find volunteers who call me every day and want to do tree plantings this spring. And the other thing the city has to do is sign an agreement with ODOT to maintain that site, which you guys are maintaining those ODOT sites all around town. So, my last plea,
Is this-
we're missing an opportunity.
When's the deadline?
It's ongoing, so
Okay.
we could start the process, but it's a great opportunity, and it's something so tangible for the new administration to show that, hey, this is a new, there's something real and something everybody could see. And I can just imagine evergreens in and out.
We were talking at one point about planting some of the difficult to mow slopes around 33, I think, weren't we?
Yeah,
I mean, is that a type of
That's what-
site?
Yeah, that's what I was
Well,
thinking.
is this something that maybe Andy Stone should be engaged with Ron and see if we can do it that way? Because
I thought I was the queen of nags, but it hasn't gone anywhere, so. But
Who
so
have you contacted so far within the city?
everyone.
Okay.
They all know about it, trust me. Steve, George, Andy, everybody knows. But it is, and I'm willing to help, and it's something that's probably a little late to pull something off for the spring, but maybe fall planting, you can get big trees. But yeah, for those hard to mow areas, for the places you don't want to mow anymore, plus our entrance could look more like Logan. which is much more attractive and inviting than just the acres of fescue.
I think I'd related to you at a previous meeting when this was discussed that Andy Stone, the street director, had looked at Logan's on-off ramps right there at their middle
Yeah.
exit ramp, and he would like to try to do something like that for the Plains on-ramp. When you go East State Street and you're going up the ramp to go 33 west, huge area in there that takes a lot of time for the street department to mow. It's just a big green bowl.
Yeah.
So I know Andy would really like to do that area right there, and any of the areas I think adjacent to the interchanges, because it takes a lot of time for the city to go out and mow all these right-of-way areas, and
It can be
the
done.
less mowing, the better. The less equipment wear and tear you have, the less consumption of gas and oil. Then the guys have more time to do something else instead of just mowing constantly. I know out on Columbus Road, the city maintains part of the ODOT limited access right away. Besides the city entrance sign out there, it's kind of the same kind of thing. It's just grass with nothing to break it up.
The thing, I think, to emphasize to city officials, Steve, is that ODOT has been threatening to change this program for 2 years now to make it an 80-20 match, and I and my colleagues have been begging them to, we can't even get people to apply for it when the money is, when the free trees. But I really, if you don't do it soon, there's going to be a match, and it won't be in kind, it'll be a cash match, and that'll really change the dynamic of the program. So I'd say it's worth, and Andy knows the process. Andy knows the guy I can help. It's the guy at ODOT really wants to do this. He's the best guy of all the districts that I've worked with. So
Maybe just a reminder to Andy.
what's
Have you
that?
spoken to Andy's boss?
I don't. Who's Andy's boss?
Paul Warren.
Oh, the one man I haven't talked to.
I don't know how it was funded, but a similar undertaking was done when the Super 2 South Y, the new 33 interchange at Richland occurred. And Andy
did do a project.
Andy honchoed
got
a
an
volunteer
ODOT
planting
grant.
project out there, and I can't remember, someone donated the plantings, and then there were...
That was the
there
same
were
project. So Andy even
volunteers.
has the template. It's a pretty, the process is the same. I think maybe that's what's maybe holding people back. We had that drought that year, and so a lot of the trees we planted
There was a lot of
died.
die-off.
But you just got to keep planting. And, I think maybe we could do a little bit better with a water plan this time, especially if you're going to do those more accessible areas. I think we could easily come up with a plan to water things.
Yeah, the cloverleaf, the ramp that I was talking about too, being a bowl, it's always going to be collecting water right there, runoff from the highway and just the rainfall. It's not running off and going away. Like out the South Y, there were some places where plantings were done right up by the highway. The land sloped up away from that, instead of water going to the plants, it was running away from them. I kind of felt sorry for all those evergreens that were planted right there on the ramp as you go up. They were intended also to be I believe, to be a sound or a noise buffer between the new highway and the Richland Avenue neighborhood.
And we kind of promised to keep that going, because I think we went into that knowing one planting wouldn't do it. So I felt bad that we didn't continue to try to plant there every year. And the volunteers are there. I mean, there are groups, church groups.
Can we
school
apply
groups.
for that site again? I mean, is that allowed in this?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're really flexible about where you put the plants. So as long as they're on state right of way.
I don't know if any of you have seen some reporting on the concrete noise barriers that are put up along highways. They're very expensive to install. And I mean, how much nicer and easier and probably just as effective would
Well, they
trees
say
be
trees
as
are
opposed to
actually
that
more-
bleak concrete wall to keep the sound back.
It's true.
So,
Well, okay, so we will encourage
One
Andy.
more week of nagging.
One more week of nagging, and we might even suggest...
Ron's back from paternity leave too.
yes.
So I was so tempted to email him today, but I held back.
All right, yes, Janie Marie kept him busy for a while.
Yeah.
All right, we will, perhaps, we could forward a suggestion or two. I heard bald cypress.
Oh yeah, we can work with Andy and help him with the.
Yes.
I'm happy to help.
Okay.
In that bowl area that would collect water.
That's
all
right.
Cypress there.
And we have Steve as the first volunteer. So, see, the website information is the same as last time, once the mayor's office has approved what we've got, Ron Forrest says that whatever we submit to him, he will put on the website, and he would be the person who would be making putting the things on the site. And of course, the things that we put might include the recommended street tree list at some point, which Ann and Emily are working on.
And Lee.
Okay. So, you want to say something about the format?
Well, we were thinking about a new format, and Anne thought that if we could get it on Excel, it would be easier to add and eliminate trees, add information. And we were thinking about getting more information about the trees on there. But in the process of getting the information, we have been getting together lists of trees for wet sites, dry sites, compacted soil, salt-tolerant trees. It was
Tough, attractive trees.
yeah. And I've been looking at some of the latest research from Worcester on crabapple trees for revising that section of the tree list.
Yeah,
And we've had 2 meetings, and we've got another one set up for later this month.
okay, so it's coming right along. And we might say that whatever we put up on the website will, for people to have access to, will be something that is unalterable.
Yes.
It'll be a PDF file, so that we won't, but the Excel
And
would be
we
used
also,
in-house.
we also thought that some of these lists that we're getting together would be useful for us and perhaps for Steve and some other people with the city.
Yeah,
The lists of trees for specific sites, like wet sites, compacted soil, in addition to the regular list. And those might have some trees in them that we do not normally recommend. But if we had that information, if we come on a site that has what would normally be considered an undesirable tree, but it's a very difficult site, and we know that's a tough tree that is suitable for that site, we'll, in that case, try to save it.
We've also wanted to flag trees where it would be fine for a large green open space, but not suitable in a parking lot and things like
Yes,
that.
we're marking the trees that need a large area.
very good. Well, this will be really very useful information. Thank you very much.
Does that mean the box elders have to go there and the catalpas?
No, what you'll have is just a list of terms, and you'll be able to sort it any way you want. That's the nice thing about Excel.
Yeah.
It'll all be there, and you just pull out the bits you want.
Okay, we're going to be calling on you for that part.
Yeah, made it sound easy.
If I might comment on the relationship of this discussion to development of large sites with very good soil, Mr. Valentour will soon be back to present to you a possible final plan for Hickory Creek out on Columbus Road. I mean, that's the hugest blank slate. I think that you could get very good soil,
Yes.
river bottom soil, very sandy.
Yeah, but they compact it so much, don't they? I mean,
They have to compact for the building site, but the soil itself is very sandy. It doesn't take much really to break it up. It doesn't have the high clay content that a lot of the other soils do. So it's not, I wouldn't think that it'd be that hard to work it back up again.
Is he going to go under the old landscape ordinance, or has he chosen to go under the new one?
Well, I'm not sure. Their initial review was under the old one.
Yeah, but there's no reason if they think it's better for them if they want to go under the new one, there's no reason why they shouldn't. I mean, it will be up to him.
Right. Well, that was like right there too. Tom Parfit's office was another one where I think Mr. Valentour did that one also, where there was a proposal to do, a desire to do more of groupings than the perimeter lineal landscape.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking of, that if it looks more attractive to them to go under the new one than the old one, there's no reason why they shouldn't, I think.
Okay, I'll relate that to him too, because I know he's aware of the necessity to come back for that final review.
Yeah, I think, like many other of the architects in town, they really like the prospect of a bit more freedom. So, thank you very much. Is there any other item that was not?
Other than the minutes, no.
Okay, well, then have people printed out and read their minutes. There are some minutes circulating if you didn't.
I don't.
Okay.
I'll be here.
So, please review them and let me know if there are any corrections to the minutes that David Sinkoff took. Okay, David likes the look of them.
I propose we accept them.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, I think the minutes are accepted. Okay.
And we note that we've got a change of
Yes.
date of...
The next meeting that we have will not be the first Thursday of the month. It will be the second Thursday of the month. And that is April 10th, 7 p.m., City Council room. And there is a site, somebody said that has our time listed as 7:30 for the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, on the internet,
Is that
on the city
city?
website. Mhm.
Yeah,
It says
that needs to be
7:30.
changed.
I was informed too that it says Board of Zone Appeals starts at 7:30 also. So I forwarded that correction information
Who do you forward it to?
to Ron Forrest, who's on vacation right now for a couple of weeks. I'll let him know that the tree commission time might be wrong also.
Yeah.
And just so you know too, I'm going to continue to pitch for a boards and commission secretary. Because we have so many boards and commissions now, but everybody has a different way that they have their minutes accomplished, their records kept.
A little
For example, the
uniformity.
Board of Zone Appeals, it used to have a secretary. My office has been doing that for the last 8 years. I tried for 2 years to present and do the minutes and keep the records. I have an officer who helps me now, well, actually it's been 9 years, and for 7 years, he's been Secretary of the Planning Commission. It's been a great savings to the city, probably $150,000 in clerical services, but, kind of wear, I hate to say it, but you wear thin after a while, the different things you do. I don't mind doing it to keep the ball rolling and all that. But I think the city would be more well-served if we did have a boards and commission secretary, someone who would be the central repository for at least the written record.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the drawings or that kind of thing, but the applications and the communications. So I want to keep pitching for that.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get him a hybrid car to drive. I want one of those at the code office. We'll take one first.
We'll get you a bicycle.
How about
Thank
a
you very
Segway?
much. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Are there any other items? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, so-
Adjourn, second.
I second
Yeah,
it.
very good. Seconded, and I do approve. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, Alfie. You do so good.
Yeah. And I will contact the Meadowland.
I have it already.
Thank you, Steve, for the McDonald's stuff. Do you need any more McDonald's stuff back from me?
Second meeting was a little easier.
But unfortunately,
Yeah, it was when no one comes. That's always, it's always nerve-wracking when.
No, I just
what
mean,
would we do to it if we didn't plan?
seeing how.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, well, we're open to
I had,
suggestions.
I heard from are we really off the air?
No, we're not off the air yet.
It's a good committee.